Hi, my name is Dr. Natalia Starostina, and I'm Associate Professor of History at Oklahoma City University. And thank you so much for inviting me to present at the conference. I'm fascinated with the topic of voyage and the way how voyage transform identity. And today I'm going to be talking about immigration as a life journey, memory, identity, and gender in the lives of Nadezhda Teffi and Anastasia Shirinskaya. In the midst of the October Revolution and the Civil War, many Russians immigrated to France, and fully 5,000 such newcomers settled in Paris alone. And it was very unique immigration which did not exist uh, uh, in any period of history because first of all, the scale of the immigration was immense. And another important thing that it was mostly educated people, the elite of the Russian society, the very best writers, poets, artists, the most talented military leaders, political leaders, they left Russia because they were afraid that they're not going to be safe in Russia under the Bolshevik rule. So in interwar France, Russians constituted one of the biggest ethnic minorities, and again, it was quite a unique situation. And in my brief presentation, I will address the construction of the emigre self and the question of subjectivity in the writing of two Russian emigre women, Nadezhda Teffi and Anastasia Shirinskaya. The new emigre identity whimsically integrated the memories and mythologies of the old regime in Russia, nostalgia over the Belle Epoque, and efforts to integrate some elements of modern Parisian lifestyles. And it would be true for Teffi. Nadezhda Teffi is a very well-known Russian writer, and she still enjoys so much popularity for the contemporary Russians. Many of her books are published. There is a three and five and seven volume collection of her work available in Russia. And her words, lines from her books are part of the everyday vocabulary for many Russians. So she again she even though she's probably not very well known in outside of Russia, she's one of the most important, one of the most beloved writers in Russia. And Teffi had a very unique life. She was born in the family of talented lawyer, although it was not a very wealthy family. Nevertheless, her mom gave Teffi and her sisters the very best of the education. So Nadezhda knew literature, she knew foreign languages, and it was very talented family because her sister Mira Lakhvitska became one of the most recognizable and most promising voices among the Russian women poet. And tragically, she died very young. But she definitely was inspired by her older sister. And her brother would become the exceptionally talented military leader as well. And during the Great War, he was the one who would be um, taking care of would be in charge of the Russian army on the territory of the Western Front. So again, Teffi grew up in a truly exceptional family. And as it was the case for many young girls, she got married and she left the capital and she came to the estate of her husband. She does not write much about what was happening in her marriage, but we can guess that it was exceptionally abusive marriage for her. And she made a certainly difficult decision, and it was a custom of this time. If you were wanted to separate from your husband, it was no question that you would have to leave children with him. And it certainly is a tragedy in his life, because when you are reading his work, you can see how much tenderness, how much love in her work towards the children, and she devoted short stories to children. And nevertheless, again, according to the very rigid um, laws of this time, if she wanted to divorce her husband, if she wanted to separate her husband, she would have to leave her children with him. And she come back to St. Petersburg, and she become one of the easily recognizable, one of the most brilliant uh, writers in Russia, and it was a silver age. It was a moment of the great cultural um, um, sort of thriving in Russia. So it was a time of Blok and Akhmatova and Tsvetaeva. And nevertheless, Tefi immediately captures the imagination of the Russians. And there's even little anecdote that the Russian Tsar, Nicholas II, when people were asking him whom he would like to see in the edition which would celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Romanov rule, allegedly Nicholas II said Tefi. So that was a sort of the name of which immediately came to his mind. And in this year, Tefi was able to meet with many people. She met with Vladimir Lenin. She met with Alexander Kalantai. So again, she certainly was a very important part of this political and military milieu in Russia. And once the First World War began, she served as a nurse, and one of the images on this slide is she serving as a nurse. And Tefi was always sympathetical to the common people. She was very well aware of the social stratification, of the problem of poverty in Russia. When the revolution began, she uh, did not make easy decision to kind of, it was not an easy decision for her to leave Russia. It was very difficult decision. But nevertheless, when there was she witnessed this growing amount of terror and purges and executing people, she made this exceptionally difficult journey through um, Russia, and she ended up being in Paris. And here again, as I pointed out, she's one of the most important writers in Russian literature, very beloved by Russians, not much known outside of Russia. And one of the sort of the important contributions of Tefi to this creation of emigre identity was the short story Kefir. Of course, it's a French translation from Kefir in the Russian transliteration. And it became a much quoted manifesto of the Russian immigrant who just arrived to France. So it portrays a Russian general who, after enjoying the view on Place de la Concorde, ask a rhetorical question. It is, of course, all well, gentlemen, it is all very well, but que faire? Faire que? And again, she captures this problem with significant issue which the immigrants faced at this time, because back to Russia they were very much in demand. They were they had the writers, the poets, they had a huge audience. Now they were immigrants, and the people who would be able to buy their work, who would be able to read their works, was much less. And Tefi became a very important voice for this Russian immigrant community, and she captured these very interesting mechanisms how memory and nostalgia and myth making would help Russian immigrants to deal with the trauma of displacement and alienation. And she was very well aware of the fact that the way how Russians remembered La Belle Époque, how Russians remembered Russia before the war was quite different from what it was in reality. And so her short stories would surprise with this incredibly accurate, psychologically accurate description of this gap between the ways how things were and how people remembered them and how people would keep reinventing their identity and reinventing the stories of their life. And another important part of Teifi discourse is gender, because she would always talk about this huge difference between the experience of Russian immigrant women, and many of them were noble women who never lived in reduced circumstances, and now they would have to work as maids, as waitresses, as babysitters to help their families to survive. And at the same time, she would be more critical of men, and she would be saying that the Russian men were often crushed in a state of the deep depression because of the immigration. And they would devote all their time to writing memoirs, to exile in their own names and for shaming contemporaries. And there's a kind of little details that the only difference between the memoirs that some were written on the typewriter and others by and uh, one of the important works by Teifi was the adventure novel Aventurный роман. It describes the tragic fate of a Russian immigrant woman, and the main character is Marusia Dukina. She is a model. She works in the fashionable uh, Maison Manel, and basically it's Maison Chanel, of course, in this novel. But Teifi describes how this trauma of how this alienation from the motherland would eventually lead her to the untimely death of this. And as I pointed out, Teifi's brother was head of the Russian expeditionary force in France during the First World War, and so Teifi was able to preserve the voices of the war veterans and immigrants in interwar France. And she truly became the voice of women immigrants, and her stories helped researchers to learn about the experience of women in immigration. And another incredibly important figure is Anastasia Shrinskaya, and she left Russia when her father was with Wrangel's fleet. It was the last remnant of the Black Sea Fleet in the Imperial Russian Navy. She had left Crimea and ended up in Bizerta, the last resting place for the fleet. And she was a very young girl when it happened, and nevertheless, she did so much to preserve the memories of these Russians who ended up in Tunis. So she would be working as a math tutor, and she would be spending a lot of her resources to take care of the Russian tombs at the cemetery when the officers and sailors were buried. She would collect memories of the Russian immigrants. She would maintain a Russian Orthodox cathedral and would help the children of Russian immigrants to learn their Russian language. And here's the image of this church, Russian Orthodox church, which is built in Tunis, and Shinskaya was very, very important part of this community. And here's her memoir "Bizerta. Последняя стоянка", which describes in detail what happened during these tragic years, and how she helped to create the community. So she became an important figure in contemporary Russia, and her books are republished. And um, she died, but again, her efforts were recognized by many people in Russia. So, in conclusion, I would like to highlight how these women immigrants writers faced the necessity to operate in a new cultural milieu, and language barriers, switching from Russian to French, nostalgia, alienation, gender biases, and the need to create a new sense of identity. And the presentation shows the importance of new immigrant networks, which the Russian immigrants created, the rise of literary artistic salons that sought to revive the glory of the Russian Silver Age, and the creation of the new immigrant identity. So they both become truly the key figures of the Russian immigrant communities. And as the last slides, it's a bibliography. Thank you so much.